welcome to Book Lust. I'm Nancy Pearl. My guest today, a return guest who was here when we talked about her novel, The Center of Everything, is back with a new novel, The River View, featuring one of my favorite characters of all time, Jamie Harrison. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
You mean Jules Clement.
I do mean Jules Clement.
But I like the idea that I'm his alter ego.
You are his alter ego. And I remember when we were talking about the center of everything, which people can now go back and watch because all of these interviews are readily available. I asked you if you were working on a new Jules Clement, and you were, I believe, thinking it through or thinking about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so talk about your relationship to Jules Clement. But before you do, I just want to say, this is a sub-mystery series. It doesn't matter in what order you read them. In this one, I really would recommend to readers that they begin with the first of the books in the series, The Edge of the Crazies, which is where I, if I may, fell in love with Jules Clement.
Thank you.
And couldn't wait. And this is the fifth book in the series. And thank you for writing it.
Well, I mean, thank you for reading it. It was harder than I expected to go back to the series. I found it unexpectedly. I had forgotten the difficulties of how you roll out a plot, how you keep your secrets. Mysteries add another layer to it and sort of an extra discipline. And yeah, it's hard. I had charts everywhere. But Jules is a character I fell in love with too. I don't know really how I came up with him, but I wanted to write about the town I lived in. And I wanted to come up with a cop who was a cop for the right reasons, possibly muddled reasons. His father was a sheriff, and he had become an archaeologist, and he'd left, and he wanted to move home. And Blue Deer is sort of modeled in my hometown of Livingston, Montana. And it's not easy to find a job here. It's not easy to find a way to live here. This fictional town's about 7,000 people, and to an amazing degree, you know everybody in town. So I came up with a man who was in his mid-30s and who was trying to fit back into life here and trying to think the best of everyone, or not. I wanted somebody with a sense of humor. I wanted somebody initially who was unmarried and sort of free range and having fun. And it was tremendously fun for me to write about it from a point of view of a man. I got to have bar fights. Nobody suspected we had anything in common, you know. It was really kind of freeing and also practical, because there's probably not still very many female cops in the state of Montana. So I wrote 4, and I took him through a variety of romances, a lot of death, way too much death by population to be believable, but you know, things do happen. And left them 20 years ago and had to come back, and wanted to come back. And when I first started writing this newest book, The River View, I made Jules 20 years older. And I gave that up after a few months because it just wasn't as fun, Nancy. I don't mind being 20 years older, but I wanted him to stay young. So,
are there decisions that you made with the first book or the early books that forced you to carry a plot out in a certain way into this fifth book? Do you know what I mean? Things that you kind of regret?
Things that limited me. Well, the main thing is that in this fifth book, I go back to sort of the central tragedy of Jules's life, which was the murder of his father. In the first book, I said that he had been killed in a highway pullover by a man who had shot him. And in this book, I take on why he was shot. Everybody, the killer has confessed, so there's really nothing to know, right? But his mother wants to know the truth, quote unquote, and the truth is supposedly just why. But yeah, I was constrained. I'd said it was a shotgun. I'd said it was somebody
Right.
driving a truck, and suddenly I'm like, how do I do this? How do
Yeah.
I make this not quite so clear, or not so clear cut?
Right.
Yeah, I had some regrets.
I kind of, I love those mysteries where you're unraveling events of the past,
Mhm.
and how still those events really have great repercussions, especially this crime has huge repercussions in the present of the book.
Sure.
Those are my favorite.
It made him who he was,
Right.
and it made sense to deal with this crime when I was bringing him back because it allowed me to review his life.
Yeah, right.
Fairly organic way. This is what happened. This is what made him who he was. This is why he became a cop. And then explaining why he is not a police officer anymore. He's not a sheriff anymore. And some of that is what I dealt with when I was going to have him
Be
have it
50 years.
20 years later. It's harder to imagine a maybe more left-wing police officer leading a sheriff's department in Montana now. It just is. I mean, I wish it wasn't quite that way, but it's much more divisive out here now, and it's a little harder. So I had Jules quit at the end of he stopped caring by the end of the fourth book. Let's put it
Right.
that way. He became, sort of in the gray area of what he was doing and what he wasn't doing, and he kills somebody somewhere in there. And has mixed feelings about himself. So in this one, I had to find a workaround to keep somebody in. It's good to know a cop, even if you're not a cop, for the
Right.
sake of a mystery novel. And I have his wife, Carolyn, still working half-time in the sheriff's department.
And so that's, in your mind, that's how you're pronouncing it, as Carolyn and not Caroline? Okay.
I go back and forth, but
Oh, you do? Okay.
yeah, Caroline, you're right.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's how I heard it.
No, but
in
that's
my head.
normally how I do it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you read a lot of mysteries growing up?
Yeah, lots and lots. Dorothy Sayers, everybody, a lot of English mysteries, a lot of those early Swedish mysteries, the Martin Becks, which I loved those. I loved their sense of humor and their earthiness. Nicholas Freeling, oh God, everybody. I just read everybody. I sort of trying to get back up to speed. I haven't been rewriting so much, but I've been thinking about the plots, and I have a basement stacked with mysteries. Everybody from L.R. Wright. I mean, all these people I've forgotten about. Michael Innes, a lot of Ross McDonald, just the gamut. I loved Chandler when I was a kid, basically. I mean, I read most of them by the time I was 20.
And you still have those books?
I have a lot of tattered paperbacks. It's hard to get rid of the good ones.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking when I can come down and visit you.
Yeah, I will keep it. I will keep
To look at
the
those
loaded basement. Yeah, Bill James. I mean, I've got everything, or
Wow.
not everything. I don't have enough from the last 20 years. So
Yeah.
that's what I've been trying to catch up with.
Why do you think you stopped reading mystery? I mean, what did you turn away from that into, if that makes sense?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think I stopped reading them because they stopped being as much fun for me. I could see too much. I started thinking, I grew up with a father who was a writer, and I was taught to read for fun, just to read because you love it. That if a book succeeds, if it just gives you joy during it, suspension of disbelief and all that good stuff, it's successful. And I started pulling them apart so much that I really stopped enjoying it.
Uh-huh.
I also, a lot of Jules' character is in reaction to books that are very, very good, but I kind of got worn out with a brave yet alcoholic and lonely and somewhat self-pitying cop.
Uh-huh.
I just got
Yeah.
tired of that, and
Right.
seemed like so many books for a while, really good writers have that kind of central figure. I mean, I really wanted to write about somebody with a sense of humor who might have a drinking problem, but he's not ready to consider it yet, or I don't know, just somebody
Right.
loping along through life.
Right. And so what were you reading in the interim?
Lots
I
of
know
just
that's a
great.
huge question, sorry.
Yeah, it is. But I still read Kate Atkinson. She really,
Uh-huh.
her books, those Jackson Brodie novels came out just a couple of years after the first Jules. And I just found that exactly what I've been trying to do. I love
Right.
those. I just a lot of straight novels. I'm reading Anne M right now. I'm reading some Martin Amis. I've been reading, I don't know, I couldn't even begin. Lily King, Euphoria, I loved. The Sisters Brothers, just novels. Dennis Johnson after all these years.
But a lot of it is, those are like when you talked about the mysteries and now with the Kate Atkinson. First, I mean, I can see the absolute parallel between Jules and Jackson Brodie. That's a great comparison, and I wouldn't have thought of it if you hadn't said that.
I
But,
am admitting that it inspired me to keep writing
oh, good.
and
Well,
made me want to go back. I reread them a few years ago and I thought I can do this again.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that what they share, part of what they share is they're not happy-go-lucky policemen. They're not, I mean, they're not happy-go-lucky in their characters. But the books are not straight-on mysteries. I mean, in those books, there's a central mystery or more than one that they're dealing with, but they're books about living in those characters' present.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the messiness of life. I
Yes.
like the details and the mundanities, and then I like blowing them up, kind of. You know, she also does, I just really admire, nobody does plot strands better than she does. Nobody can make things, I mean, sometimes maybe she goes overboard, and I know the temptation, but nobody does it. She makes it look like it's a Rube Goldberg machine, but it's
Hmm.
really tightly controlled.
Uh-huh. And that's the way life is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I feel, the messiness of
The accidents.
the accidents and that, people say, how did you get to be who you are? And you just say, in many ways, it was chance. It was,
Right.
you turned this corner and that happened. And, who knows what would have happened if you had turned,
Who the F knows? I mean,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think that messiness that you're talking about is such a good way to describe it's exactly why when I read The Edge of the Crazies, I was so taken with it. And I had no idea when I read that book 20 years ago that it was based on a real place or that the crazy mountains were the crazy mountains. And
Right.
and I remember telling a friend who was working at the library that I had just read this book at the Edge of the Crazies. And he said, "Oh, it's set in Livingston, Montana, I bet." And I said, "It is." Well, I said, "No, it's called Blue Deer." And he read the book and he said, "Nancy," he recognized every single street in the book. I mean, he loved it as much as I did, but for a kind of different reason, which I think
Right.
is so interesting about why we like the books we like.
It is, and it's so subjective. It can be when you're reading it. I could be reading, I could pick up those books that I couldn't get through 20 years ago and love them again.
Absolutely.
It's all it's all mood.
Right. It is. It is. And I think that that's something that's really important to realize that if you don't like a book, that's in a kind of genre or whatever that you normally like, that I would say like 80% of why we like a book or not, or why we feel like going on is
Right.
due to our mood and how
It's
much.
not the book's fault
No, it's
usually.
not the book's fault.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think that, I mean, of course, when people talk about books set in the in the, the West, Montana, Wyoming, that whole area. The Last Good Kiss is, the kind of
Best
formation
title.
book. Oh, totally best title, based on a Richard Hugo poem. The Last Good Kiss was years ago. Yeah. Yeah, it's and that's a book that I've always wanted to go back to. I think I've read it twice now over the years, but I'm kind of afraid to go back to it because I want it to be as good as it was when I first read
I
it.
know what you mean, and I've reread parts of it. I haven't reread the whole thing, and I knew Jim Crumley, and I knew how things, it felt everybody's book falls apart in places. A finished book is the ruin of a good idea, but it is a majestic book in so many ways, and it's got that wonderful line about ruining a perfectly good afternoon on a bar stool. And somewhere in this book, I put in a little call out to that, shooting the hell out of a good day. He was a wonderful guy, and it's a wonderful book. And I think that you'll still get that if you reread it.
And that's a book that messiness is the messiness of life is at its heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So are you reading anything or we talked about that a little bit. So let me back up and say, so are you working on anything? Are you always working on a book? I'm so in
Yes.
awe of people who, what does that mean that you're working on a book?
It means that I had hoped to get through a rough draft for the next book before I started the book tour,
Oh,
because I thought we're all working on a book all the time is just self-defense. I think it's just making sure that you don't suddenly find yourself high and dry without an idea. It's just, it's healthcare. It's mental health care. And I'm not that far into it because I kept having to put it down, pick it up, put it down. Life intercedes, and life really has interceded this year. And I've been, writing essays. One thing that people might not realize is you're constantly trying to plug,
Yeah.
get stuff out there, get your name out there, do Instagram, do Twitter, do this, do that. And I think it takes me longer than other people. I somehow have trouble getting back into a task once I do two other ones. I don't just dot back and forth. But I am liking the book I'm writing,
Is
and I hope to have it.
is it a historical like The Widow Nash or
No, it's another Jules. It's another Jules,
Jules? Okay.
which sort of deals with it. It's another out of the past. I really like writing books that are unfilmable, Nancy. But it's starts out with something that happened when he was an archaeologist with a good friend. And then it goes on to come up with the many ways you can steal things from safe deposit boxes.
Oh.
So, and it's called Blue Ghosts.
Oh, okay. Was what I was very excited when the River View came out. One of the reasons I was very excited is that the earlier four books have been reissued in paperback.
Makes me really happy. Last month, yeah.
So that was
pretty.
Yes, yeah, very pretty editions. And I thought, boy, that's the way to do it, because now people can go back to those early books. So what about the audio book of this one? Or
I am trying to remember the voice actor's name, but he's got a lovely voice and he's doing it right now.
oh, good.
Yeah, if it's not out now, it's going to be out very soon.
Oh, good. Because I'm a late comer to audio, relatively late, but boy, in many ways, with the right reader, I enjoy listening more than I enjoy sitting down and reading.
That's great then.
Which is so fascinating because it adds that new dimension where it's not just you and the reader, it's not just you and the book, and Paul Auster talks about how he always leaves room for the reader in his books, and that he believes that at the end of the day, it's a collaboration between you and the reader with the book that they're reading, which goes back to mood.
Right. That's a good I mean, that's a great thought. I have trouble doing it simply because I will sometimes float off, and I don't wanna miss the plot. So I
Uh,
listen to a lot of nonfiction
yeah.
where I assume I can just I don't know, whatever, but I should start doing it, and I love this guy's voice. I loved, the reader for the last 2 books for Widow Nash and for, Center of Everything, so I've had a lot of good luck with that.
When you're so when you're reading, so what I'm finding is that I feel like I've had a lifetime of reading, and I'm in a way analyzing every book as I turn every page, which does
Mhm.
not make for a comfortable reading experience
Yeah.
because it's too hard to kind of get into it. And I don't do that with mysteries because I don't really care who done it. I'm reading it for the
They're
experience.
propulsive, and you're reading them
Right,
as
right.
entertainment, pure entertainment.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's kind of a relief in a way to read a mystery that I'm not editing in my head.
Mhm.
Um, and is
Right.
that kind of your experience? But you're finding that you're doing it with mysteries as
I
well.
was doing it with mysteries. I mean, part of it is that I edit part-time too, so I'm always it's hard, like when I read galleys for other people or when I'm appearing with other people, it's especially hard if I have a bound book, even if it's a galley, I won't do that. I turn off that part of my mind as much as
Uh-huh.
possible. If I'm
Right.
reading it on screen, I'm just constantly wanting to
Fiddle.
futz around with it.
Right.
I do Yeah, I have trouble with just blowing through a book now. I really do. Keep stopping. I look at the sentences. I look at the structure. It's been a while since I've just blazed through a book. That part of me I worry is gone, and I think the last time I really had that feeling, I mean, I've read so many good
Right.
novels, whether they're literary fiction or whatever, and I've truly enjoyed them. But in terms of just blazing through Denise Mina's fun mystery Conviction,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was gleeful and just great, you know?
It wasn't too scary. I always find Denise Mina too scary.
No, Conviction is completely different. She is having fun. It's like she's thrown out everything. It is essentially a comedy.
Okay, all right,
It's
good.
really completely you can feel her joy on the page and her complete decision to be silly about some things, and
Uh-huh,
she pulls it off. Yeah,
okay.
no, she's scary. I mean, she's normally very
Yeah,
grim. This
yeah,
is not grim. Nope,
okay, good. Because
different
Grimness,
person. Yeah.
not in the mood so much for
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I don't really wanna deal with child murders, and
right.
I just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I never wanna be in the head of either the victim or the murderer in the preface. I just don't want.
Yeah, well, it's been done,
Yeah, I just
and it's been done well in some books, but yeah,
yeah, I just don't want it. That's not don't do that in the last
okay.
don't do
No
that in
no
the
big italic I have an
right.
editor who hates anything like that, so
Oh,
if I've
good.
ever tried it, he's beaten it out of me.
Oh, good. Oh, that's great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again for
Thank
coming back on the show.
thank you for having me.
You're more than
Good
welcome.
to see you again.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.